Esports. And what is esports? For most people, esports is just a fancy way to say competitive video games. And so, you know, a few years ago, or I guess it was about 6 months ago, and I saw that a 16-year-old kid won $3 million at a video game tournament. And I'll be honest with you guys, my first thought when I heard about this 16-year-old who won the $3 million was, one, I wish I was good at video games. If you know me, if you were to interview my kids, they would tell you I'm terrible at video games. Even growing up, it just wasn't my thing. I'd rather play outside and play sports. Now, honestly, my second thought was, man, I wish I was in the esports business. It just seems like something that's been booming and booming. And, for me, it's been kind of fun to watch this esports thing. Now, I've said, I have 5 kids. And so it's been really interesting to see just how it has developed in the last few years. I know probably if you're a parent too, you know how much YouTube has blown up in video games. And for us, a big battle in our house is over screen time. And I know parents could probably relate to the battle over screen time. And so, I'll tell you guys, my 16-year-old, he plays more video games than I would care to admit online, okay, and publicly. He plays a lot of video games. My 8-year-old, on the other hand, same thing. If he was left to his own devices, he would play video games 12 hours a day. Luckily, we've got Wi-Fi controls and parental controls on his Nintendo Switch, and so he's got this 2 hours of screen time a day, and that's been during quarantine time. So hopefully, as we get out more and more, we can lessen that screen time. But it's a battle, and I'm sure a lot of you have dealt with that battle as well. So. For me, the thing that I want to talk a little bit about esports is, and it's kind of incredible, is that the former CEO of ESPN, Steve Bornstein, said, "I believe esports will rival the biggest traditional sports leagues in terms of future opportunities. And between advertising, ticket sales, licensing, sponsorships, and merchandising, there will be a tremendous growth areas for this nascent industry." So, there's people who are very aware in the sports industry that, hey, esports is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's kind of crazy. So today I want to talk about, are there parents out there supporting their child's video game dreams as much as their athletic endeavors? And I'm not advocating for that in any way, but I'm kind of curious. Are there parents who are saying, hey, we talk a lot about, you got to get out there and play, you got to practice, you got to do your batting practice, you got to practice, 100 free throws before dinner. That was one of my things growing up, and so what would you say if your kid said, hey, I want to be a professional esports player, or I want to earn a scholarship in esports, I need to practice 3 or 4 hours a day, and they were serious about this. How would you react to that? What would you do if your child said, I want to create a YouTube channel, and I want to be a Twitch channel and be a professional gamer and content creator? How would you support that? So those are the kind of things I'd be curious in hearing about you guys today. And would it change? Excuse me, my allergies this morning a little bit. Would it change your view on screen time? Would you allow more screen time if you knew that your kid could win $3 million? So I'm curious to hear from you guys a little bit. And let's talk about that a little bit. So, Evan says, limit the video games. Hey, I'm right there with you. I understand that. That's a good thing to say. Wes says, screen time is super limited at my house. Maybe 30 to 60 minutes a day, maybe. And they have to ask before using it. So, and I think that's great. Like I said, you're not going to get any pushback on me on less screen time. But I'm very curious, again, as I see my kids get more and more involved in it, better at it. My 16-year-old has become really good at video editing, and his YouTube channel, and he helps others, and he wants to go to USC for film school. A 4.0 student who does really well in school and plays a lot of video games, and wants to kind of not make a career out of video games, but digital media and content. And so it's been an interesting conversation in our house. So I'm curious to you, I want to hear what would you guys do if your child said, hey, I want to be a professional esports player. So let's see here. Wes says, I could possibly get behind the idea of it if my kids weren't the athletes they are. I agree, and that's awesome. And I'd be curious to see and talk to parents who their kids aren't as athletic, or they don't go out as much. What would that be like for you? And so it'd be curious to see. Kristen says it's hard. My kids are 14, and that is truly one of the few major interests they have. The scholarships for esports a bit more available than traditional sports, so we try to find the balance. Kristen, I think that's really great. I think it's a good response, and so I appreciate that. I wanted to share with you guys a quote. A good friend of mine, when we talked about this on social media a few months ago, this is what he wrote. He wrote, "I'd rather raise a properly socialized, blue-collar working child earning a living wage their whole life than a kid that makes $3 million a year playing video games that can't hold a conversation, make eye contact, or knows how to make friends with anyone." I'd be curious to see if you guys agree with that. Is it a little hyperbole? But for me, I understand that sentiment, and I think there's some validity to that, and so that's pretty good. Mike says, limit it. I feel kids are getting less social interaction already. Don't disagree with that. Mike makes a really good point. He says, it's dangerous calling it sports. It's competition, and I get the money aspect, but at the end of the day, it's sitting on your butt. I put myself through college playing poker when it was cool in the early 2000s. Despite what ESPN said back then, we weren't athletes either. Great. That's a great point. I'll tell you, you and I are probably the same age. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, I played poker way more than I'd like to admit on camera. And that was before it was really popular and stuff like that. So those are some really good points. Is it sports? It's called esports. Is it really sports? I'd be curious to see what you guys think on that. And so. Good morning to Mike. Good morning, Wes and Ed, and everybody else is tuning in. Larry chimes in and says, "Let your kids live their dreams. Sports is not for every kid. Listen to them and encourage them to chase what they want. Video games have been a way that me and my kids have bonded. It has actually driven conversation about the way the sport should be played." Larry, that's a great point. And I'll tell you, for me, for some of you guys who have teenagers, you might know it's difficult sometimes to have conversation with your teenagers. And so for my 16-year-old, sometimes video games is the entry point for us to have good conversation. I can tell you my 8-year-old and I play this game called Splatoon 2 on Nintendo Switch. He is absolutely addicted to it, but it's been a fun way for us to play together. And it goes to show that his level of skill is a lot like mine. And so him and I, bond over some video games, and it's not a lot of it, but I think that's really good. Let's see. Drew adds, "I also think there's a health aspect to sports and none in video games. If my kids wanted to focus on esports, I would support it, but I also require they still have physical activity on some kind." And I think that's the point that a lot of people are trying to make. Hey, this could be a really great thing, but you've got to have balance in your life. You've got to get out there and play. You've got to be healthy. You've got to be good at socializing face to face, not just over a headset. And I think that's really an important thing for people. And so Choppers Baseball says, "My biggest concern is that it is a brand new arena, and as a parent, I need to make sure that my kid is able to choose a traditional career path." So interesting there. Choppers on that, and I appreciate everybody's feedback on esports and the parents and what you would do and how you would do that. So as we move into our Q&A section now, we're going to move into Q&A. You can ask questions obviously on esports, coaching, parenting, kids, anything you guys want to talk about. Let's get into our Q&A session next, and so we're going to start Q&A in about 30 seconds or so, and so let's see here. Wes says, "I'm stuck at the new video games. I'm a gas and brake kind of guy, but I do enjoy kicking my boys' butt when I pull out a win on MLB The Show." Yeah, that's pretty funny, actually. I agree with that. Kristen says, "The esports teams in college work out. They work on cardio and other aspects to control blood pressure and such." Hey, that's really interesting. I tell you what, Kristen, something I'm going to try to do is dig in a little bit more on the college sports aspect of that and what it entails. I don't know a lot about it. The last things I'll kind of say about this is I read this on a blog. It says, "Some esports athletes are definitely raking it in. Hobbyist players, those who play in tournaments online, can earn hundreds or even thousands. Really good players can get sponsored, paid to produce YouTube promotional videos, or even to sign with a team. Fortnite phenom Tyler Ninja Blevins reportedly makes $500,000 per month. $500,000 per month. And the Data 2 player universe can pull down six figures per tournament, not counting their league salaries. It's very rare for players who qualify, and the lifespan of a professional gamer is even shorter than that of a pro football or baseball player, usually from ages 19 to 25. So, the average lifespan of a esports athlete is 19 to 25. That's pretty incredible. And it says right here that esports carry risks for the body and possibly developing the brain. The 8 to 12 hours a day that many top sports e-athletes say they train per day has led to an increase in computer-related injuries, including carpal tunnel syndrome, repetitive strain injury, and back pain among elite athletes. And after several competitors suffered collapsed lungs, players are being warned not to hold their breath during intense moments. Though esports doesn't have the same physical risks as contact sports, players, as pro players and ex-pros, a lot of them complain about burnout. So I think that's pretty incredible stuff. I just think the esports world is fascinating, and video games and how much it's kind of just blown up over the last few years. And I just think for those of us who have kids, for me, again, I have a couple kids who are really into video games. For me, it's, again, trying to find that balance. How do you support them in that and their dreams? And I think that's really good. So